really tough time. How much can we express to our family, meaning our children? So, you know that Chris and I only deal with the most dramatic, chaotic cases, and it can be very, very hard to live in a home with children while being terrorized by an ex. Here she is. Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can get Nikoo on. Oh, I don't know what's going on with Instagram not picking up my thumbprint or my fingerprints. One second. Let me, this happened last time. Let me get Nikoo on here. Okay, here we go. I don't know what's happened with the technology lately, but here she is. Yay. All right. So Nikoo, hi. So we are going to be talking about how to protect kids from conflict during divorce. And I'll also say post-judgment, since many people in this situation are dealing with years and years of court battles. So before you even officially introduce yourself, Nikoo, what boundaries should be set around discussing any legal matters when there's kids in the home, whether they're little, teenagers? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously the strategies are different depending on the age of the kids. I mean, one example I can think of where the strategies would be different is like if you have a little kid, it's not if you have a teenager, for example, or somebody who's old enough to be reading, you want to be careful. We tell clients not to leave legal paperwork meetings lying around, things like that. With a little kid, that might not matter so much if you're dealing with a toddler or somebody who can't read. So the strategies are different, for sure, depending on the age of the kid. The level of what they can understand and what you should speak to them is different. But really, I think one boundary that applies to all ages is you don't want to make the children feel responsible for your own emotional pain and what you're going through. So you don't want children feeling like they have to mask their own feelings because they're worried about how it's going to impact you. I really caution against kind of making the home an extension of everything that happens in the courtroom. That's
Mhm.
another big one that we see. Sometimes we'll be talking to a client on the phone and I'll realize that the children are right there. Our client might be sitting in the car, the kids are with them, and it's just so we'll sometimes say, like, why don't you call us back when you're at home or when you're out of earshot of the children, because it just kind of makes them, you don't want to make home, like, again, an extension of that courtroom.
Yeah. Like I think about you don't want to make home more of a war zone than it already has been.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and it's hard. I mean, I'm a mom. I get it. It's very hard to compartmentalize and keep everything that's going on in one arena of your life out of it when you're at home with the kids. But it really, I think, is an important thing just to preserve the peace in the home.
Yeah. So now, Nikoo, can you officially introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So I'm a divorce and family lawyer. Our office our firm is based in Beverly Hills. We've been doing this we actually have our 20th anniversary coming up in 2 days.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so we've been doing this for a very long time, and we really focus on high asset, complex divorces, which oftentimes, unfortunately, can become very high conflict. You're dealing with a lot of times people who are very successful in the business world in their professional lives, and so a lot of times that leads to narcissism, a lot of issues that kind of make divorce a lot more contentious than it needs to be. And so our practice is really about trying to get people to take the emotion out of it and to think strategically and kind of to go through the process with it's a stressful process. There's no way around it. It's a very painful process, but because it's already so painful and stressful, really, I think we try hard to make it not any more stressful and difficult that it has to be.
Yeah.
And
Well,
sometimes
that's
that's hard because the other person might be, making it very hard to do that.
absolutely. And I forgot to tell you this when I was talking to you before, but we work with men and women all over the world. LA is the epicenter. We have more clients in Southern California than anywhere else, and I think it has to do with some of the things that you mentioned, like the success and appearances, and it's a little bit different
Yeah,
than.
yeah, there's a lot of wealth. I mean, that's the thing is, like, I think sometimes we see divorces that could be high conflict that are not because the parties don't have unlimited assets. And so they realize very quickly, okay, if I'm going to fight this, by the time we're done, we will have nothing left. And so that is an incentive for them to make it less high conflict. But when you're dealing with couples who have millions they can spend on attorney's fees, it can drag on for, I mean, we have cases that have dragged on now for 6-7 years.
Hmm.
And it's not pretty, and it's kind of, but the money's there, and sometimes people kind of, um, one side sometimes loses sight of kind of what's important, and their goal is just to win, win, win. But sometimes we have clients where really it's unfortunate. They really want to make things end quickly. They want to kind of tone things down, but the other partner is not letting that happen.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely our world and people that we deal with. And when you say one person wants to win, 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 we see that, but I would also use the word punish. They want to punish the other
Absolutely.
side, and they
Yeah,
use the system to do that.
absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of that, what are some mistakes or misconceptions people have when they are divorcing one of these, especially when it comes to their kids and how much to share or not, or what's going to happen to the kids or how the kids feel from what you've seen in 20 years? I can't believe you're 20 years.
Yeah. I actually have a little bit of I come from a corporate law and then a government criminal background. So I haven't personally been practicing family law for quite that long, but I've been doing it for a while. I think one common mistake, if I is that people tend to become really focused on the past and proving they are either that they are right or that they are the victim, or that proving all the wrongs of the other side. And
Mhm.
there's this perception that a lot of things will matter to the courts that actually do not matter to the courts. And so, the court doesn't care who was mean, and in a state like California, which is no fault, the court doesn't care if one side cheated. The court
Mhm.
doesn't care. Obviously, there's things like domestic violence or abuse, and that absolutely are relevant. But proving that your spouse was, not emotionally very present, or proving that your spouse cheated, or a lot of these things don't matter to the court. And so they sometimes we have clients who are very focused on this kind of thing, to the point where they can get very, I think of one case, and it was very sad, but she was so focused on proving that her husband had not been around that much when the kids were young, and he had worked a lot, he would travel a lot for work, that she would go around to all the neighbors. She had compiled all these declarations from the neighbors, from the other parents at the school, I mean, she dragged so many people into this divorce, and I think it made the process very stressful for the children, because she was talking to their friends' parents. She was talking, so, and she thought that gathering all this evidence is going to be very instrumental in her case, and it wasn't, because the reality was, like, even if the father hadn't been that present when the children were younger, once the parties had decided they wanted to get divorced, he was willing to cut back on his work travel. He was willing to cut back on a lot of things. And so the court really just cares about what's in the best interest of the child going forward. So really the strategy should be focused on how can we establish that it's in the child's best interest to stay with a parent, not what that parent did in the past, or what kind of, you know, um, so that's definitely, I think, what, anyways, this is a long-winded way of saying, I think the big mistake that we see a lot of is the focus on the past and the focus on proving who's the better parent, or who's the better spouse, or who has been the better parent. And this can actually hurt a case.
Yeah. So as you're talking, I think about something that we work with clients on, like those best interest factors or custody factors. And one of the most significant ones is which parent will support the child's relationship with the other parent. So people come in with that kind of evidence where there's attack, attack, attack. They don't realize that it makes them look bad because they're going against that value of understanding that the child is half of each of you. And if you're going to just focus on that, how is that going to help your child?
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that the court, in this particular case that I mentioned, I mean, the court really cared about that, because the behavior was really not in the child's best interest. It was causing, a lot of stress and anxiety for the child, and the court noticed that. So it completely backfired, and that happens sometimes. I mean, we've seen cases where one parent becomes so focused on when the child comes home from the other parent's house, questioning them, kind of interrogating them about what happened while you were there, what did mom or dad do, and there's this, besides the fact that it really just, again, it makes the home an extension of the courtroom battle, which is not great for anybody. But the court has seen that in some of the cases that we've seen, and actually, it's again worked against the parent, because it's seen as that parent alienating the child from the other parent. And and generally the courts think that it is in the best interests of the child, like you said, for the child to have a relationship with both parents that is thriving and that is healthy. So if one parent is seen as hindering that, that's going to hurt their custody case.
How often do you have people claiming that their ex is abusive and therefore they should get sole custody?
You know, not as a preemptive strategy almost. So early on in the case, we've been seeing this. We actually did an article on this a while back, but one of the things that we're seeing an increase of is people preemptively as a tactic to gain leverage, claiming that there's domestic violence. And so once that process kind of starts, it puts more pressure on the other side to negotiate on custody time, to negotiate on financial aspects of the case. And so, and sometimes it is legitimate. I mean, it is legitimate sometimes, but we definitely do see where the allegations are not legitimate.
Yeah, you know the term for that. I feel like a lot of lawyers don't know the term, but there's a term, it's called the silver bullet strategy.
Yeah. 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 That's actually was in the title of the article. That's yeah.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I think also it's very dangerous to make false claims of domestic violence because not only legally can you get in trouble, but the messages that you're sending to your child from the beginning that their other parent is unsafe when of course it's not true. It just affects them for much longer than the court battle.
It does. Yeah, it absolutely does. It's something that we unfortunately definitely see more than I wish we would.
Yeah. So I have another question for you, but we're getting a question that I think is really interesting that we hear a lot from our own clients. Are you seeing a trend of alienating parents getting more traction in the courts these days? I'm seeing a way bigger awareness these days of what's truly happening in courtrooms. Do you notice that?
So I want to make sure I understand the question because I think what the question is not are we seeing more parents alienating the other side? Is the
No, the
question
opposite.
so are we
Yeah,
seeing
so,
more of an awareness on the court's part that parents do this? I
yeah.
believe so. I think the courts are becoming smarter about recognizing that because the prevalence of these allegations has just gone, it's increased so much that I think a lot of the courts are realizing, okay, this is starting to be used as a litigation tactic or as a leverage tactic. So at least in the kinds of cases that we are working on, we are seeing it more and more. The courts having an awareness. I mean, we had one case, this was a couple of years ago, but we were stunned. The court removed, the mom was doing a lot to alienate the children from dad.
Mhm.
And the court decided that even though she had been the primary caretaker, she was a stay-at-home mom, or she had been for the duration of marriage, and the children were, not, I want to say a teenager and one about 8, 9 years old. It was a while ago, so the details are a little bit hazy. But one other thing, what the court did that was a little bit, we'd never seen it before, is the court decided that for the kids really to be able to have a chance with their father, they would need to be taken out of the mom's house and completely cut off from her for 6 months.
Wow.
So the court allowed the father to have the kids for 6 months and kind of get a reset. And mother was devastated. I mean, I can imagine as a mother how devastated I would be if I couldn't see my kids for 6 months. But so for us, that was kind of the first time we saw, okay, the courts are starting to really, the alienation claims can really backfire if the court thinks that it's not, thinks that they're not, you know, valid,
Yeah,
or if
I
they're
think
doing damage to the kids.
yeah, and that's why it's so important to understand those values before you go into court to know the impact that what you think you're doing is right is actually going to have.
Yeah.
So another thing that we talk about a lot is co-parenting communication. So what impact, I mean, I already have ideas, but what impact do you see that communication between co-parents has on children?
Oh my God. I mean, it absolutely has an impact on children. Just like when you're before a divorce, when parents are together, the way they communicate has a huge impact on children. So I don't think that changes once, once the parents are in two separate households. I and it's when you're communicating with the other side, if the communications are nasty and tense, it's very hard to then shift your mood when that's over and you're back to just being at the dinner table with your kids. So the whole environment um, is fraught if the communications are tense. We try to tell our clients to view communications with the other side the way you would like business communications.
Mhm.
Just you don't need it's not once the divorce, especially once the divorce is done, once things are done, there's no need to be rehashing everything emotionally in those communications. Keep it short, keep it focused. Also, keep in mind that anything in written communications can be used against you. So you don't want to be, that's another reason to kind of be careful what you are saying or the tone. But yeah, it's very easy for those communications to get out of hand, and then that affects the children and the mood overall.
Yeah, I mean, we see it as one of the number one ways that triggers our clients is the fear of what's coming in to their inboxes, the messages they just
Yeah.
hear the notifications like. So we actually work on that like more than anything is dealing with communication, effective communication, and not popping off. We call it.
Yeah. No,
Exactly.
I mean, it's very helpful to have, I'm happy to see this increase in divorce coaches, facilitators, individuals like yourself, because I think decisions, but then the parties go home. And then I think the courts aren't in the home to help kind of with the home side of things. And so I think, and that's just, it's going to have just as much of an impact on your children and their future, how you handle the process outside of the courtroom. That side of it's going to have just as much of an impact sometimes, if not maybe more than what actually happens in court. So this is definitely a growing trend we're noticing of people bringing in, uh, you know, outside professionals, and I think it's a good thing.
Okay. Oh, well, that's good. Thanks. So let's see, or let me think about how when someone can't control themselves, and kids are often exposed to conflict, even maybe at one parent's home. What are signs that parents should look for to see that this is really detrimental to my kids? Like where it's not just, yeah, they don't like it, but it's really affecting them, and maybe they should start considering additional mental health help.
I mean, anytime as a parent you see major changes in normal patterns, sleep patterns, eating patterns, um, just in general, anxiety, irritability. I think those are all kind of things to look out for. Sometimes it's the child who learns to just kind of eat their own emotions and kind of they're so worried about not wanting to add to the chaos and that's the hardest to pick up sometimes because they're the good kid. You think everything's fine, but really you have to be monitoring and it can be easy to lose sight of how it's impacting a kid like that because they might not be vocal and they're not going to come out and say, I'm very anxious or I'm very upset or I'm very distraught or so it can play out differently in different kids, but I would look for, if you have a kid even who's always been very open and talk to you about everything and all of a sudden they're kind of reluctant to come to you with their issues because maybe they don't want to add to what you're going through. I would look at that as a potential sign. And like I said, just the other major changes in patterns.
Yeah. So that makes me think about when someone says, my kid always comes back from their other parent saying they don't want to be there and they're grilling them all the time. They're interrogating them. I'm kind of combining the question that's coming in with my question. How does one deal with a child who is constantly being interrogated and the kid keeps reporting, like, I don't want to go back to that person's house because all they're doing is asking about you?
I mean, it's really, really tough. I
Mhm.
um, and I say it's tough partly because the other side probably knows that what they're doing is unhealthy and they're doing it anyways. So it's very
Mhm.
hard to rein somebody like that in. Sometimes we see it's genuinely a parent doesn't realize how damaging that can be, and that's where I think having professionals that are working with the family can be very helpful because sometimes it's a matter of education, like letting the other side know that this is really damaging to the child. And we've seen cases where once they bring in a family therapist, or once they bring in somebody to kind of help navigate their relationships within the family outside of the courtroom, things really change for the
Mhm.
better. So sometimes it's education, but sometimes it's the other side knows it and they do it anyways. And if clients are able to, if the lawyers are still actively involved in the case, I would definitely say flag that for your attorney, and your attorney can kind of strategize with you on how to bring that up to the court so the court is aware of what's being done, and there can be efforts made to stop the other side or to put limits on the other side about what they can say to the children and what they can do. But that's that's very one of the hardest things that I see our clients deal with.
Yeah. Now let's talk about preventing some of this. Are there ways that a parenting plan can reduce conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a parenting plan takes out ambiguity, right? So if you have already been, we always tell, for example, clients to revisit their plans over the summer before the new school year starts because schedules can change, and so if things are up in the air, any kind of ambiguity is another opportunity for there to be more conflict, right? So if you're forced to kind of be texting and talking to the other side again about, well, who's going to pick them up from this class that is new now, that's another opportunity for communications to get to get
Mhm.
nasty. But if everything is kind of thought out and prepared in advance, then there's less to argue over. There's less to it's just kind of taking more of the ambiguity out of it, which I think always helps to reduce conflict.
Yeah, we always say no gray language.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that's so hard. Um, when somebody wants to get family therapy and their ex doesn't want to do it, do they have to go to court to get a court order?
Yeah, in some cases, so if you want to force the other side into therapy, if you want to make that a condition of your um of you know of the process in general, then you cannot force somebody to do it unless there is something coming from the courts. Otherwise, it can that can be challenging. But
Yeah.
I mean, I always as attorneys, we always advise our clients. That is it's a positive thing for you to be doing anyways. So why let it get there? It can help. Um, it can help the parent to just have somebody to vent to. So there's less of a chance that they are at home then venting in front of the kid or child. Um, and it's obviously better for the child.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
one
I mean,
thing
one thing.
that I learned from asking this New York City attorney, his name is Yoni Leveritz, about parenting plans, is he said that um, if possible, you can carve out a therapy clause in the parenting plan from the beginning that says if anybody wants therapy, if either parent wants therapy, then it's not going to be a legal decision. It's just already like a given that it would be a yes. Have you ever done something like that where you carve out already from the beginning that therapy is included? Like that's a given. We don't need to have a big discussion about it.
I'm so sorry, Lisa. You got cut out for a second because my daughter kept trying to call me. so
That's okay. This
so
is
I heard just the end of your question.
Yeah. So I did an interview with a New York City attorney who talked about, his name is Yoni Leveritz. He talked about something called a therapy clause that he advised putting into a parenting plan that would eliminate some of this conflict over therapy, because we see conflict over therapy constantly where someone's like, nothing's wrong with the kid, it's you who caused it, etc. So he suggested putting what's called a therapy clause in a parenting plan that says if either parent or the child wants therapy, it's a given. So that way we don't need to get a court order. Have you ever done something like that?
Oh, that's interesting. We have not done that before. What we have done is we have kind of built into the plan. For example, we've had cases where one parent has not been supportive of the child being in therapy traditionally, and so
Mhm.
we have kind of put that in there up front that the child has to be allowed to go. Like that is
Mhm.
if it's whether regardless of which parent they're staying with when it's time for their sessions or and so we have put that in there. But yeah, I think that would be a great thing to try to put in.
Yeah, yeah. Anything to avoid going back to court again.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, is there anything that you'd recommend, like day-to-day practices that people can do who are going through extremely difficult co-parenting relationships and possibly always threatened with court, to just keep them like calm and safeguard their child's well-being?
Honestly, I think as hard as it might be, um, and again, I say this as a mom because I know it can be very hard to feel like we're allowed to take time for ourselves, especially when you're already in a situation where you're worried every minute of the day about how it might harm or impact your child. I I think the best advice is to just make sure that you are taking some time every day for yourself, whatever it is that kind of brings you peace, whatever it is that allows you to reset a little bit, but take some time every day to not be thinking about this. It'll it'll I think that's a really big part of it. And it can be very hard to do, but I think there is no, yeah, that's one thing I try to, whether it's meditation, whether it's taking a walk, just anything to kind of allow that mental reset for yourself, I think, um, can go a long way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes people talk about, and I do this too, you just sit with a cup of tea in your hand for a minute and just like pay attention to what it smells like, the warmth on your hands, look outside a window, even just for a couple of minutes. But it
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
a difference.
and we've had clients kind of push back on like, like, that sounds a little too woo woo, or like, how is that going to help my case, or how is
Yeah.
it going to? But no, I think it's very important that you take that time um, every day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a hard process. It is such a hard process. And it can go on for a very long time. So anything to kind of, yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
That's self care.
Yep. So Nikoo, how can people find you?
Oh, so we're here on Instagram, Berenji Family Law, and our website's online. We are, like I said, our main office is in Beverly Hills. We're BerenjiFamilyLaw.com. And do I give my number here, or do I give
You
the
want to? Yeah, why not?
yeah, our office number is 310-271-6290. But yeah, we're always happy to help. I feel very lucky that this is an area that I get to practice in. It's when we're making a real difference every day, and families, I think, the most important thing. And so it's yeah, we're always hoping that we can help.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm really glad
Thank
that we
you.
made this happen and I came in from watering the blueberry bushes.
And thank you for yeah, teaching me how to do this, my first live interview.
Good. All right, well, let's not make
Have a
this the
great
last
day.
conversation. You too.
Thanks.
Bye.